Don't try and talk with that thing on, because I can't understand you. My wife says I have hearing problems anyway. Huh. All right. I'm going to call the July 23rd meeting of the Airport Advisory Commission to order. Walt, I'm not going to ask for a roll call. You know who's here. I understand Commissioner Armstrong is attempting to join us through GoToMeeting. If that works out, we'll put it in the record. There's a few technical issues there, but we do have a quorum with the four of us present, so I will proceed. First item up is approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion. I have a motion by Commissioner Kunkel and a second by Commissioner Burris to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion or debate? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. Or aye or yes approves the agenda, a no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, passes unanimously. We'll call it a 4-0 until we know for sure Commissioner Armstrong is with us. Next item up is approval of the minutes from the Thursday, June 25th, 2020 meeting. I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion by Commissioner Burris to approve the minutes and a second by Commissioner Kunkel. Any discussion or debate on the June 25th minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the minutes. A no or nay rejects them. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, we'll put that down as a 4-0 vote. All right. Mr. Stark.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Start with number 5 with the update of what's going on out at the Air Center. Do a little adjustment here. So basically, I think most people know what's going on with the COVID. It's going on longer than we had hoped it would, and that's affecting everything. Not anything less than our air service. We have recovered some of our flights. We're back to 2 flights a day going to Dallas, one in the morning and then a middle turn, and then the arrival in the afternoon that stays for the next morning flight. We had approximately 692 passengers for the month of June, and that is about 13% of what June was for 2019, so really low. But expected. I would like to see it do better. I think it actually did do a little bit better in May, but we've with the governor going, we're open, we're closed, I think that's affecting the passengers and that type of thing. So it's really more affected by the travel restrictions than anything else. I know you guys all want to see Phoenix come back, and so do I. The latest word I've gotten on Phoenix is that it probably will not be back till somewhere near the end of the year, and that's probably the earliest. Flight operations are also down a bit. We are running about half of what we did in June of 2019. I also attribute that to the travel restrictions. People don't want to fly in here and have to go sit in a hotel for 14 days. So we're not seeing as much as we could. Honda aircraft came in first part of this month, stayed a week, did a bunch of testing, very successful, doing some certification testing on brakes and some other things, so we're happy to see them come. The overflow parking that we've had for COVID has, for lack of a better term, mellowed out. I think we're at a what I would call a good balance point right now, where airlines are still trying to figure out what they're doing with things. There's still more airplanes out there that need to be moved, but this is going to take, it's not going to be the big waterfall that we've had in the past. We're going to see some come in and some go out. We've seen Frontier take out about half of the airplanes that they had parked here. already, and eventually the rest will go out down to about 4 or 5 of them. I think I mentioned that last month. But that's actually happening. We've seen a few American and United 737s trickle out. Those are starting to go back into service, but not in any big numbers. They're onesies and twosies. I know Kavu's here and Jenair's here, AirSale's here. I think everybody's talking to other airlines about more airplanes. So those deals are still yet to be made. We probably will continue to see more groups of aircraft come in to be parked here long term, but those things are still yet to be worked out. A lot of them are associated with the international flights that nobody expects to come back anytime soon, so those will most likely be large aircraft. With that, I'll interrupt mine and introduce Mike and Jackie from Armstrong and tip that off to them and let them talk about projects, because we've got a lot going on right now.
Hi everybody, I'm Jackie Martinez. I'm the design engineer. I'm working on the project to reconstruct taxiway Alpha and Juliet. And you can see that on the drawing up there. I know it's kind of high up there, but it's the D shape at the end of runway 1735. What we're going to do is we're going to reconstruct both of those taxiways. We're adding in new lighting on all of taxiway Juliet and half of taxiway Alpha. We're going to be having a pre-bid meeting this afternoon to allow the contractors to look at the area, to ask questions about the project, and then we will do a bid opening on August 6th. And we're going to be doing an electronic bid opening, so it'll be fun. It's within the supplemental grant that the city was awarded for 2019. And then we will also be looking at the AIP funding, the entitlements that the airport has as well. So based on how the bids come in is how we'll award the schedules for that project. Any questions on it?
Go ahead.
That's just strictly for airplanes. Those are taxiways, so that's just strictly on the airfield. There's nothing that's out of the AOA on that.
So it's for the aircraft coming off of the runway to be able to, to be able to get to the terminal building and. Correct.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the purpose of, yes, sir. The purpose of that, sorry.
Turn it in
I
a
don't want
very
to get
long
yelled
time
at by
ago,
the
right.
I learned last time, see, Mayor? So the purpose of like Juliet, for instance, is right now the asphalt has broken and it creates FOD. And again, that's a liability to the city. So this will help ease all that, take care of all that, get new pavement on there so that whole issue goes away.
All right.
I always want to throw one thing in here too, that's very exciting that we're doing this, continuing to maintain our taxiways, because if we keep pursuing this military corridor, and training and so on with these F-16s and so on, they suck a lot of FOD up off the ground. And that's going to help us in the future by fixing these taxiways. You almost
Absolutely.
have to do it. If you want to do the military contract, get them in here, do the training, this has to be clean. And we all know that's a true statement, and not everybody knows that these jets are like a big vacuum cleaner, and especially the military planes, and their requirements are a lot higher. So I just thought I'd throw it out there and tell you thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. That, like you said, it minimizes the city's liability when we fix these kind of things.
My couple questions are, what's the timeline for this? How long do you think this will, once construction begins, what's your estimate on how long it will take? And how will this intersect with the upgrade renovation of 1735, which is coming?
Coming out.
Yeah. Can you kind of put that in perspective?
I'll let the engineer talk about it.
Okay, so the project's broken out into 3 different schedules. Schedule 1 and 2 have to be awarded together if it's awarded. And Schedule 1 and 2 are taxiway alpha, which is the top part of the D.
Yep.
And so Schedule 1 is for the reconstruction of the pavement. Schedule 2 is for the lighting of that project, or that taxiway. And so taxiway Juliet is Schedule 3. So taxiway Alpha, we have scheduled for 45 calendar days. And then taxiway Juliet, we have scheduled for 30 calendar days. So if all three schedules are awarded, then it'll be a total of 75 days.
Okay. Does that include going to the west of 17 touchdown area, or is that basically being, I don't want to say abandoned, but we're not maintaining that, correct?
That's correct.
Because that ties into the old, was it 1-2? It ties into the old
He's
1-2
talking about the
touchdown.
old- Yeah. No, sir, that is not an active runway, therefore it's not eligible for federal funds at this point.
Okay.
So that was
Gotcha.
not identified with the FAA scope of work.
Okay. But then what about the 1735 renovation? What are we at on that?
So for the capital improvement program for the airport, the runway 1735 is scheduled to be reconstructed within the next 5 years. The next project that we're going to be looking at is drainage and runway safety area grading. And based on that, it will help us develop how we go about looking at reconstructing the runway. So it's going to be a 5-year process, but we'll do the drainage study and then a preliminary engineering report, which will include geotechnical review, analysis of what's existing, so that we can go back and determine how we want to construct it in the most efficient way.
Okay. Any other questions on this one? Okay. And that's going to be this afternoon or tomorrow? This afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
If you guys don't mind, I want to talk a little bit too, have them talk a little bit too about the vehicle parking lot and the upcoming MAP grant for this year, which will be on ramp stuff too.
Okay, that sounds,
So on the vehicle parking lot, which is MAP funded, the grant is in place. We've been working diligently on the task order, getting that approved through the FAA, because everything's got to be approved through the FAA. So we worked with them on getting that whole parking lot approved. So there's a lot of conceptual things we had to come up with and show them and make sure it qualifies under the Federal Funds Act. So those are a couple of things that we want to make sure that we're following the rules. Everything we design is FAA eligible and state eligible. So we're gone through that process, and we're now at the step that they've accepted the task order. We have to go out for an independent fee review, we being the city, sorry. The city will go out for independent fee review. They do a check on our fees to make sure they're justifiable and they're within the limits. And once that process is done, then we've gone through so many schematics, to be quite honest with you, that we have a pretty good idea how this is going to look and feel. So we're kind of at that stage where we've got a lot of pre-design kind of done, because obviously we had to justify it with the FAA. So we're at this point where Scott's going to get the IFE completed. Once that's completed, we're ready to roll. So hopefully that design, like I said, doesn't take too long.
okay. Questions? Now, if I remember right, we're looking at removing 650, tearing that down. Is that included in the project costs, or is that something else?
It's in one of the phases.
Okay.
Again, what we're looking at with the canopies is how many, putting those canopies, how much asphalt can we build? So
Okay.
we're doing a check and balance system currently. So it's a matter of economics and figuring out, okay, are we actually going to be able to push the project across into the next phase or not? And we're not at that point quite
Okay.
yet. So.
Okay. Anything else? Very cool. Lots going on. All right.
Thanks, Scott.
So before I get out of the end of my briefing, I got a couple more quick items. Y'all all shake Walt's hand, well, I mean, maybe figuratively, bump fists or elbows, but This is his last meeting. His last day will be next week on the 30th.
Uh-oh.
So everybody's needs to say goodbye to Walt, and thank you for all the great help over the years, Walt.
Bye, Walt.
This afternoon at Legal, Armstrong's consultants will be looking at renewing their contract with them. It went out for RFP last month and went through a committee process and is now recommended through legal committee to the city council for approval. So pending approval, Armstrong will be getting a renewal of that for 1 year with 3 additional options to go on. So thanks to them for all their hard work over the years. We appreciate it. I don't remember if I mentioned last month, but the MRO got canceled. The MRO meeting conference got canceled, so we won't be going to that, and they replaced it with a virtual meeting, which I don't think we'll be participating in yet either. I haven't gotten details of what happens with our registration and all of that yet, but the next one will be in April of 2021 in Orlando. So I think we're going to plan on looking at that as our next MRO meeting. As far as leases go, we've only got one going to legal this afternoon, one new one. We have no renewals, and that's a company called Custom Graphics and More. They'll be going into Building 733, which Kabu last occupied, and basically it's a graphics printing shop is what they're doing. With that, any questions you guys have for me?
Anything for Mr. Stark? No? Okay. Okay.
On to number 6.
Yep.
Okay. Jeff, have you put the tower slides up? Ah, you're awesome. Okay, Lewis, I asked him to do this, but he's got another meeting right now, so I apologize for him not being able to be here, but he did send me the slides, and so I can do this and give you guys an update on the tower progress of the 2 water towers that are going up. If you've been out there, you've noticed that the pedestals are up for both of them, and as of last week, the tank is up on the east one over by the old tower site. So altogether, 46% of the contract time has been used. The tower next to the existing tower is approximately 70% complete, and Tower 2 over near the park is about 40% complete, with Tower 1 anticipated completion in January 21 and Tower 2 anticipated completion in August of 21. There's the pictures of what we've got looking up through it right now. That's exactly the site picture from the terminal, although a little bit zoomed in. For the one on Gillis, they have yet to finish welding on the tank, do some sandblasting and painting, and that's what'll take them through January to finish this up. And then when we get done, we've got to start putting our equipment on top of that as well. And that, I think, is basically it. No, one more. The Tower 2, as you can see, the pedestal is partially up. That's a pretty close picture to what it looks like now. And they're still finishing the finish work on that pedestal. And when they get done with the welding and such on the tank on the other one, they'll move over to Tower 2 and start finishing that one. Questions?
You want to talk about the communication issues?
We have some stuff to work out on the top of the tower. The original discussion about where our communication equipment would be mounted and the cell phone tower stuff would be mounted was on a rail around the rim of the top of that tank. Well, what they've shown us yesterday is a very small rail that's only at the top. I don't know if we can see that on this one. You can see the small piece up at the very top. That's what we're talking about. I mean, the rail's not there yet, but that's where that rail would be in that small circle at the very top. So the issue that we have with that, at least on our equipment and most likely on the cell equipment too, is 1, lack of space, and 2, is that downward projection of those antennas over that rim is going to be problematic with a line of sight. So we have some discussions to do with those guys for the tower, for the communication side of it. Anything else?
Anything on the water tower?
Yeah, I gotta quit it. Line of sight for what?
So for
You
us,
said
we have.
our equipment and line of sight are the two
So-
things that caught my attention.
So it's both. So we have radio equipment up there. We have a repeater up there for the police department, and that'll get moved over. And then we also have some networking equipment up there that needs a line of sight to the places that receive it. And as far as the cell goes, I'm making an assumption that they've got the same issues.
All right, I was just hoping that it wasn't any aircraft-related communication.
No, not at all. It's all related to our internal stuff and then the leases of those cell companies.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? All right. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So this will be a brief update on the Dean Baldwin project. Just, you know, just to kind of give everybody the final numbers, the work that has been done, how much has been spent, and just a little bit of information on the loan. We'll have the presentation put up on the screen, and we'll go through some just brief slides. So the, again, as the project for Dean Baldwin included roof replacement, fire suppression, fire alarm system, and some electrical upgrades. Just a little bit of background. So this project started back in 2017. Of course, this project was taken to the Infrastructure Committee, approved, and as well as the City Council approving it back in April of 13. One of the funding sources was a loan from the New Mexico Finance Authority. And what you see here is the debt service schedule for that loan. It was a $2.5 million loan. We have made several payments since then. We're on payment number 34 through 45. As you can see, that is this current fiscal year, which total about $248,000, a little bit shy of $250,000. The loan will term ends on July 1st of 2029. So we still have quite a bit. All of the proceeds of the loan have been drawn down, so now it's just a matter of servicing the debt for until the end term date. So that was one of the funding sources. On the next slide gives you a quick overview of all of the different sources that will cobble together, with the DFA loan being one of the primary sources, and then a lot of different funding sources coming from the general fund, the Air Center, you know, some EDA grant, some state appropriation money, and some additional state funds. So there were a lot of different funding sources, and as you can see, they're just broken down between just major categories: the DFA loan, the RAC, and the state and the city. And that's what you see here in the pie chart, is just the percentage of breakdown, with DFA loan making 31% and the state making up 36%. So those two, you're looking at 67% of the total funding source. And then the Air Center, 16% of the share of the funding source for this project. In regards to the actual categories of where this money was spent, as I stated, roof was about approximately around $4 million, with the fire suppression system at $2.3 million, fire alarm $500,000, and some electrical upgrades. And of course, there's always other items listed there. We have for a total around 7.3. There was a EDC building number 60 that was also used with some of those funds for $300,000. We still have 2 open POs. I believe one of them, which is listed there for the electrical fire alarm, that has already been finalized. And we still have one for the re-roof that we're in the process of just finish paying that off. And it is a process, because this project was funded in part through, we went through a CES cooperative service purchasing agreement, and with the COVID there was some delay in that, but the work has been completed. It's just finalizing the invoices and paying those out. There is a proposal that has been submitted to staff for annual preventative maintenance of the fire suppression system from Casal, and that's around $42,000, and that's still under review. So that's nothing that has been finalized at all. But that's just wanted to share that. I mean, just for your information. And what you see there, the final slide, is just providing just a pie chart of the major categories, with the roof taking up the majority of the work, with the fire suppression following at 33%. So this project, as I stated, has been completed. In the other room is Trent Moore, our facility manager, who was also involved in this project and following it through from the beginning. So if there's any questions, we'll stand for any questions, as well as Trent and Scott. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Fuentes? The debt service is revenue from the air center, is that correct?
That is correct. As you can see at the very bottom of that page, it says debt service from net revenues. So it is from the air center.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. Anything else on this one? So this one's, and the other question I had was, this last roof, is this damage from the wind or hailstorm that's being fixed? This last open PO?
No, that is part of the big project.
Okay.
It was just one of those final payments that needed to be resolved.
Okay.
It has taken a little bit longer but it's all related to the original project.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else? All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
$8 million.
Number 8. So this was something that we talked about revisiting last month, the update on the crunch pad. Air Sales here, Jen Air's here, if you guys have any questions for them. Basically, we've continued to work with Jen Air and with Custom Construction, mostly with Jen Air as their lease. We're working on that. They're within a month-ish of having their financial stuff complete, and then we should be able to start looking at beginning construction very shortly after that. So that's where we are on Jen Air's crunch pad. And I remember last month we talked with AirSale about you guys were looking at getting a quote to do your own. Randy, has there been any update on that?
You can use the one right next to Walt. Go ahead, use Walt's.
Okay, so I do have the quotes. I have 3 quotes, but what I need from the city is a formal letter that the crunch pad is in fact being shut down.
Okay,
I don't have that
Not a
yet,
problem.
so,
we'll get that for you.
okay. I do need that to give that to my corporate, so they've got the formal notice, and then I'll give them my quotes, and we'll go from there,
Okay.
Okay.
okay?
You want that from the city attorney or the city manager, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. I think it doesn't
Okay.
matter as long as it's a formal letter from
Okay,
the
we'll
city.
figure that out.
Yeah, I should be able to get that tomorrow. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't go away in case these folks, anybody got any questions on crunch pads? Microphone, please.
If you don't have access, I mean, can you get a crunch pad built by the time you're off of the other one, by the end of the year?
I would assume.
So talking with Custom Construction, Brandon says that basically, just looking at what he does, he can do it in 45 days.
Yeah, by looking at the quote, it does look like it's not a huge ordeal to do.
All right.
Okay. All right, so letter from us to you guys. All right, and then Mr. Burris, Commissioner.
Fast question that, just snapped in my mind as reading this other stuff, but when you start talking about contractors, are we gonna have any problems with getting environmental licenses or anything like that since the state shut down? Because you're gonna have to do an environmental study, right, for this?
I would say that yes, that's the case. If we have to do any cultural studies and that sort of thing, that, yeah, everything with the state has been slowed down. I mean, I think everybody's experienced that.
I don't know, just a thought, because you're talking about tearing
Sure.
down one, building another one, all we need is a letter, but then I thought, well, hang on a second. Some of the environmental impact studies, we may have a problem.
True, we could, and we've already begun the environmental side of that, and we didn't get a CADX yet, right? We're still waiting on Tandy? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, we anticipate that we're going to get a categorical exclusion, but there is always the outlying chance that they want a full study. And mostly that would just be cultural and that type of thing, so you would bring somebody out and it would go through the state, and so, yeah, they would get involved. Yeah, and so there is the outside chance that the state's working from home could slow us down. We know that.
Just a thought.
Yep,
I just,
perfect.
You know, because if it impacts their business, then we got a problem.
Yeah.
right? So,
I think in that case, then we have to make sure that we take care of our sale, and we'll have to extend if it's beyond our control.
it's just the communications, that's all,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions on the Crunch Pad projects? So we're looking at two of them, okay. All right. Item number 9.
Item number 9. Okay. So this is on the grant application that we're doing with USEDA in association with the CARES Act. So we started a process and have been talking to our congressional delegation, talking to the state, making sure we go through this the right way. And what we find, of course, is that this goes through the COG, the Council of Governments. So we met with Hubert Quintana, representing the COG, and a number of other people that are involved in this project on, partially in person in our conference room and on the phone. Went through a lot of that process and started looking at what we needed, and we came up with a few assignments. So part of what we've done is we do have already a rendering from Western LLC. We're waiting for the final numbers to come from them for the vertical construction part of it. By the way, I didn't mention it's the doghouse added on to Hangar 84. I think we mentioned that before, but just in case anybody didn't remember. But at any rate,
I don't think you did mention that.
I didn't
so-
mention it today for sure.
Okay.
I didn't know if we mentioned it before. But that would be the idea, is to add on a doghouse onto Hangar 84 that would allow a 767 to go into that hangar. The idea, of course, is so that CABU can better use their 145, working on those bigger airplanes, creates jobs, all of those things that we talk about a lot. So Armstrong is basically taking point on creating the grant application. They're the gathering point for everything. They're doing the site civil internally. We'll be working with CABU to get the business development done, their business case. And matter of fact, they're here, so I'll let them present. Bull will be presenting some slides on that here in just a moment. The other things that we were waiting for was for the COG to work with EDA and to get with us, and probably most likely the EDC would be involved in that and a lot of the community stuff, because part of the argument is that what we're doing creates jobs that helps offset some of what we've lost because of the COVID pandemic. So that's the argument that we'll be making. That's the sale pitch that we'll be making. The other things that we need that I'm waiting on, that are on my plate, that I'm waiting on information for is to get letters of support from our congressional delegation and from Secretary Keys of State EDC or EDD. So once I've gotten the business side of it, I've gotten the community side, those numbers, and I can share those with them, then those will go into our letters of support, and we'll have those things. We had tentatively targeted July 17th as a date to get this done. Well, as you know, we're talking about it today, so we didn't get it done on the 17th. So it is a high priority, and we're going to continue to work on that and get it done as quick as we can, because this money is a first come, first served money. With that, I will hand it over to Bull to do a presentation quickly on the business case.
Well, I'm going to need you to give you your name and company, for the record. Wait till you get to the microphone.
How can I be secret if I do that?
Here we go.
No, you got to be there with the microphone.
Okay.
Because we record all this stuff.
There's your button to
And I see where I'm at. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name's William Bull Johnson. I don't answer to William. I'm the general manager for CABU Aerospace here at Roswell. And we'll go through this presentation. If anybody's got any questions, ask. There's only a few slides here. We'll probably try to do this fairly quickly. to advertising. All right, so we're operating on a hangar 4 on the airport, as most of you know. We've been there for over 18 months. Now, everyone knows those facilities are either World War II or Cold War era facilities, and they were built for the aircraft of those times. And now we're handling wide-body aircraft, and there are certain tasks that cannot be done under the FAA 145 regulations without having the aircraft completely enclosed. Right. So we're looking at adding this doghouse to enable us to increase our capability. Right. We've looked at the southwest end of the building. I know Armstrong, and we've done some studies and done some sizing and some diagrams. So the physical piece of this, I think, is pretty well underway. Right. That upper one explains the limitation. One of the things that I've had to turn down is we've been offered gear changes on 767s. The aircraft has to be enclosed to enable us to do that. And we have to have a high enough roof line to jack that aircraft in there. So we've had to turn certain tasks like that away because we couldn't enclose the aircraft. Right. We also teamed up with the New Mexico Job Training Incentive Program, JTIP, and some of the other organizations here. And we've gotten funding to train people from New Mexico and we have a pretty unique operation there because we do tear down and then we move into the aircraft maintenance thing. It's an ideal pipeline to take people essentially off the street that need to learn a skill and walk them through that. Certainly the state and local folks have been working with us to enable us to do that. And so COVID kind of blew some of this up, obviously, but we were looking at adding 10 administrative employees, and we were moving towards 30 to 45 full-time, relatively high-paying jobs for the community. Yeah, and some of that's ongoing without the hangar, but this is going to double essentially the numbers because it's going to double our capability. All right, so as for some points, so wide-body cargo conversion business, which is pretty much the pipeline that we're in right now, it's growing. The accelerated retirement of these aircraft have made them available to the cargo operators. I think the constraint there is going to be how fast people like IAI can convert them to the cargo airframe. So that's where a lot of our transient traffic is now going. What they're calling the Big Twin project, which is the 777-300 conversion, is now underway in Israel for the prototyping piece. So within 18 to 24 months, I think there's an anticipation that that will be the place where the retiring 777s will go. So that'll open up that market. There's about, looking at the values, projected values, there's a difference of about half. It's 60 to 70 million to acquire a used one and convert it versus around 150 million to buy a new one from Boeing. So those are going to be pretty popular airframes if they can get this prototype done. Storage, ferry preparation, and certain types of potential heavy maintenance. If we can add this expansion to the hangar, are going to increase our capability and obviously increase the workforce. You had to excuse me while I crank my head right here to read some of this. Now, one of the things that we've discussed with a couple of customers is they're looking for a one-stop shop setup. So capabilities on the field, be it fuel, paint, they want to process the aircraft ultimately and be able to do a return to service from this site, which opens up business opportunities for other vendors at the airport. Materials, painting aircraft, that kind of thing. Now, adding the doghouse will enable us to do certain types of maintenance that will give us some opportunity to be able to do that one-stop shop setup. Into service work, which is our tear down, we're tracking pretty well with that. Obviously, some of these airplanes coming out of service are gonna continue to be dismantled. Well, the hangar doesn't really affect that. It certainly affects my ability to go attract customers and increase that workforce by bringing in more of the end of service work. We're also working on a couple special projects for some government work that it's kind of low level right now, but there's certainly an opportunity there because it's some of the niche stuff the government likes to do, and it's not a big value, so a lot of the bigger operations really don't want to be bothered with it, but seems to be something that we can certainly use to our advantage. We're rewriting the manual. We'll be adding an EASA 145 supplemental certificate by the 1st of September right now, so that's going to increase our capabilities also. And that's a business card. And that's the end of the program. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Any questions for Cavu? I've got some for Armstrong on this, so. That's a yes. Let the
Yes,
record
sir.
reflect they nodded their heads.
Yes, that is correct.
On that note, Mike, you want to come up and talk a little bit about the grant application process and because we were in that phone call, was it 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago. And don't go too far, Bull,
Well, I'm not, I'm just gonna let him have the mic.
but
So the grant process.
you want to talk a little bit about what this grant is and where this money's coming from and kind of give, because I've heard some of this, but not everybody has.
Sir, so it's the U.S. Economic Development Administration, and our Congress has appropriated funds for businesses that have been affected by COVID. So this is there's been a lot of pots of money. This is one of them. And with this money, what the EDA is doing is trying to get projects that will get jobs, which Bull's talked about, and expand these projects, and because so many businesses are going out of business, let's be real. And what the EDA is trying to do is keep them alive, and that's what this money's for. And now they are appropriate. I forgot the number in that meeting. She told us it came down to our region is like Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico, and I think Arkansas, if I'm right. I forgot here. And that region, they were able to get like, I think it was like 250 million, but like half of it went away right away. And to like, I think it was like the special pots of money that they had appropriated. So that left them with just really like 150 million. Sounds like, all right, that's pretty good. But through all the states and all the businesses, and Scott's mentioned this is the first come, first serve, that money is kind of dwindling really quick. Now, and Tricia Corbis, who is in charge of this, our region, she's actually the person in charge of our region, she kind of has the final say. And you know, in discussions with her, they're looking really serious at projects that will get people back to work. So this is, you know, I think it's gonna bode well. She has said, don't ask for 10 million, don't ask for 15 million, don't ask for 20 million. That's not gonna happen. That's not real. The sweet spot for them is 3 to 5. So she even said 5 is like, they better be really special. 3 is really what they're looking at, in our discussions with her. So those are the numbers that she's looking at. So these are the, you know, the project that we're going to go to her with that that you went and talked to your COG about. The first part she asked, has the city gone to COG? I said yes. They liked it. Your local COG has really liked it. So she said, okay, here's the next process. Let's get the grant going. Let's get the information. We need to know exactly what Bulls kind of presented. So we'll be working with them really tight and getting their business plan and how to justify the employment and how they were been affected through COVID. So this is how you got to sell it. This is how we all got to sell it as a team, because if we don't come in strong and show how Bull's been his company's been affected, Cavu, through COVID, it's not going to bode well. Actually, just in the preliminary discussions with Tricia, I had told her, hey, this is what the city wants to do, and she thought, oh, this is a great public works project, because they have different grants for different things. This is a COVID project. They have a public works grant. She thought, oh, this is great public works. Mike, we have no money for that, and it's not coming till after the fiscal year. I said, well, we're going for COVID money. She said, okay, you better make a great sell, because we need to know on the business plan side how Bull's company has been affected. How has Cavu been affected? What happened? And how does it relate to COVID-19? So those, we got to be really strong, on how we write this grant, because that's going to be, Tricia's going to, I'll be honest, she's going to judge it based on that. So that's right.
And then there's also a grant, there's a matching, we're going to figure there's some matching part to this too, right?
Yes, sir. It's an 80-20. Yes, sir. So there's a 20%
And
matching.
Scott, you want to talk about where our 20 would come from on that? Because we talked about this, but everyone
Yeah,
else.
At this point, we've considered using the UDAG money that we've had, which is around 1.3, if I remember right. It was about a year and a half ago or two, I think, that it went through city council, and they passed a resolution that we can use that money to apply to capital improvements at the air center. And that's the gist of the resolution. And then we did a lot of research with the federal government, with HUD, to make sure that they weren't going to go, well, you did what? And so the best answer we got was, it's your money. So that's really where we are with that. They did suggest that we use it for something that would be similar to what a CDBG grant was used for. So this applies the same way.
Timelines, you want to talk about that? I don't know, Scott, Mike, because supposedly we can apply for these until like 22, but everybody thinks the money is going to be long gone well before that. So what's your honest best guess on when we would have a grant application to?
She really didn't, because
Yeah,
I'll be honest, I'm not sure about how many people.
Right. So I think what we've been kind of thinking all along is that really we have, drop dead, it's all going to be gone probably near the end of the year. And that's just a guess, to be honest, because it is first come, first served money. But we do have, like you said, until I think the end of 22, but it'll be gone long before that. But there's not really any word as to how that's going right now.
Okay.
So we're just anticipating that we need to move.
I'll be honest with you, I'm nervous that the longer we're delayed, the more it disappears. So I'd love to see us get this thing in. That's why we talked about the 17th.
Yep.
We really need to get that off to them. And I'm unclear, the final decision maker is Economic Development Administration or FAA?
It's EDA.
EDA, okay. Okay. Questions, comments on this? And this would be on the southwest side of 84, kind of like what's on the opposite side of 85, right?
Correct.
Oh, one last thing. Are we going to have to put fire suppression in 84?
That's a good question. We've kind of rolled that over, and we don't know the answer. I think we would be wise to plan on it, and if we don't have to, then we don't have to.
I think so too, because my understanding, if you're going to do government work, at least some of the government, at least DOD wants fire suppression. We saw that with the Kiowa helicopter thing.
And what we don't know at this time is whether this construction will trigger the need for fire suppression, and it may.
I think you should plan on it. I'll be honest with you. I think you should just, but that's me. Other comments, folks? No? Okay. Appreciate you guys.
Number 10.
Yeah. Yay.
So, back to the continuation of this project with the minimum standards and then now the rules. Man, what a lot of typing. It's been a lot of arranging and rearranging. It's been a lot of fun to go back and review this stuff in a nerdy sort of way. But I don't know where you guys want to start. What you got in front of you in the minimum standards is what we went through last time. All the remarks have been put in there and updated. The one thing that I left in my mind that still was a little in question for me was tying down that appeal process that we talked about last month. I'm trying to get to that page, but
14.
I believe I left it in red.
Yeah, it's page 14.
And so that one's still a loose end for me. I have not had a chance to discuss that with Parker. He's been extraordinarily busy the last couple of weeks, and so have I, so I just haven't gotten to it yet. But unless you guys find anything else, I think this document is done.
Questions, comments?
I have one tiny note. Page 13, under subsection 3.13, the last sentence.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
I'm deaf anyway.
Sorry. On page 13, under subsection 3.13, multiple activities, the very last sentence, I don't like the word typically. They either adhere or they don't.
We can take that out.
Okay.
That's easy.
Yep.
I thought you were going to give me something hard.
Nope,
No.
that's an ambiguity you don't want to leave in there.
That's
Well,
how
they-
lawyers make a lot of money with them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the opposite of that is what about when it's not typically? So, okay. Yep, good catch.
On the disputes, I'm wondering if 10 days seems to be a little too brief to appeal.
The one that's in there now that we, we kind of talked about it winding up with the city council, so the governing body has the final say-so. But that puts a 3-step process in there. It's me, and then it's the city manager, and then it's the governing body. For something should be relatively day-to-day business type of things, it almost feels too cumbersome. I don't know what you guys think, but it felt to me like it was, we're not dealing with a murder trial here. We're dealing with somebody who didn't get an exception to the minimum standards. And so I don't know if it's too much, but I thought I'd put it in there for discussion and we could go from there.
Well, I think we have to have a mechanism for, somebody disagrees with you.
Yep.
Or with the air center director.
Agreed.
And this is consistent with the other procedures we have for appeals. In other words, they go to the city manager and then they can come to the governing body. I'm
And
trying
if
to
that's
think
what-
like the condemnations or other stuff. I think we have like 30 days, but I don't know anybody here.
And that's kind of what I was wanting from Parker. I sent this language up to him, and I said, I want to line up with something we're already using. If there's no sense in reinventing the wheel and making a
No.
different process for me. I'm not that special. But that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then when we get into the other document on rules, I abbreviated that process for the same reason, because I want both processes to be the same. So when we start talking about appeals to rules, that it's not different from the appeals for the minimum standards.
Okay.
So I just, in my mind, those two are tied together. They should, if they go to the city manager and they go to the city council, then they should say almost exact same wording.
They should, yes. Any other comments on here's my thoughts. Okay, I don't hear any objection to Commissioner Call's change to 3.13, so you'll make that. And then you'll get with Parker, Mr. Patterson, on 3.18, and then bring it back to us for a final review. Does that sound reasonable? Commissioner Call?
One question before we approve it.
No.
Is there any reason why the rules and regulations and the minimum standards can't be contained in one document? Instead of having two?
There's probably not a reason. I mean, before they were in the aviation ordinance. So, but when I look out at what other airports are doing, they're usually different documents. And the idea is a different area of focus. So when you're looking at minimum standards, you're governing the commercial aeronautical business activities on the airport. When you're looking at rules, this is everybody. This is the guy that drives a vehicle out there. This is, the guy that flies an airplane out there, those sort of things. So it's not necessarily tied to a business. It's tied to the individual, to the activities that they do in moving around the airport and that sort of thing. And so can't say I'm opposed to that because it was that way before in ordinance. But when I did a lot of looking, most airports have them separate.
Okay.
Just, just so everybody knows, Commissioner Kunkel was there, but from Commissioner Call's benefit, the council did approve the new ordinances, one Chapter 5 and one Chapter 4, and then the resolution on fees was also adopted. These documents, my thinking is this: once this body is satisfied that these are ready, and that's not going to be today, I don't feel. We'll take everybody at it next month. But once this body says yes, then it goes to the city manager for final blessing, and it doesn't have to go to the governing body. So this is an internal staff decision but this body's here is to do the review and say to the city manager, this is good, so that he doesn't have to do what this group does. So that's where the perspective I've got here. And so what I'm alluding to is we chew on this one more month and then say yes or no in August, hopefully a yes. And then we haven't really looked at the rules and regulations, and this one's a little rougher, but that's my thoughts, unless you guys want to do something different. Correct. No, this is the city, under statute, the city manager has a tremendous authority when it deals with, which words I'm looking for here, for policy, procedures, operations of the city and its units. So, and that's one of his responsibilities, is to come up with operating manuals and procedures. So this falls under that category. But one of my thoughts on this, and this is just me, and you guys, everybody's free to chime in here, is that the city manager's got a lot on his plate. I have no doubt Mr. Stark has done an excellent job, but I like the idea of additional eyes on stuff like this and catching typically. You're right. That doesn't belong in there. So, no, you're spot on. And so that kind of thing, and that way, when it goes to Mr. Nebb, he can rest assured that this group has been chewing on it.
Yeah, and I think typically, Joe likes to see the city attorney review everything. So that's my intent, is when we get to a point where we feel good about this, I'm going to let Parker look at the whole thing. the dispute language, of course, that's more specific, but in the end, I want him to look over the whole thing and say, do you see any problems, you know? So, and I'm sure Joe would do exactly the same thing before he looks over it, but that's exactly right. I'm the same way. I want more eyes looking at it.
It's always designed by dictator, review by committee.
Right, there you
I
go.
made that up myself, so if you use it, give me credit.
One more thing that I did want to mention too that I did change in here because Aflight talked to me about it after our last commission meeting. 4.04, I just changed the size on the jet fuel side of required storage. What we were shooting for, the original document that I was working from had 3 days of peak supply in here, and Aflight came over for basically a cursory visit, and we got to talking about this and decided with the type of airport that we have, the larger aircraft, so on and so forth, the detachments that come in from the Navy and from others, that 5 days would be a better number for to have on reserve as a minimum requirement. So for them, when they look at peak supply, it runs about 9,000 gallons per week. So if you do 5 days, that comes out to 45,000 gallons. That's the number I put in here. So just so you understand that, that did change from 24,000.
Okay. Anything else on?
I
You
don't
want
think
to
there's-
go to the rules and regulations then?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to look at going through this whole thing right now, line by line. I'm certainly game if you want to. Most of the rules that were in here came out of our old rules. I went through and took out outdated references and those type of things, tried to tie things back to what we're doing now with our security program. The reference to the Federal Aviation Agency is gone. Those type of things where the security law is gone, and so I've tied it back to the proper security law. Most of these things were still relevant, and so I copied them back in, updated the language a little bit, but there's not a ton of change in the rules from what was in the ordinance to what's in here now, other than reorganizing it, putting it into the technical format. And so if something looks out of place, happy to move it around. But I tried to be consistent as I went through this to look at things that were prohibited activities and then things that were required activities under each section. And that was the theme that I went with.
All right, the one thing you and I talked a little bit about is each of these begin with a prohibited activity, 0.01. And the question becomes what actions do we take? Now,
Right.
we can't, for there to be like a citation or a criminal penalty, there would have to be an ordinance then, as opposed to a policy. Because that would have, in other words, to take in the municipal court, say somebody did something wrong. But if for an administrative action, and so that's the one thing I don't see and
Right.
hear, and I'm thinking that, and we.
And that was my one concern. It's really twofold. It's on these rules in general. If someone violates a rule, you know, what teeth do I have? If it's something associated with this, that's easy. I can restrict their badge, I can suspend it, I can take it away, those kind of things. You know, I can completely say, you're never coming on the airport again. And in the ordinance that we redid, I don't know if you remember, but it talks about up to a $500 fine. But what I didn't do in here, because I wasn't certain how to do it, is how we tie that back to that. I'm fine with coming up with a fine schedule, if that's what we need to do, but we probably need to make sure that we tie it back into law somehow.
That's where it gets a little bit iffy for me. And
Me
I'm
too.
thinking the badge thing or suspension of badge privileges or access for, you know, that the airport director would have the authority to suspend, you know, access. But I don't
So-
have any answers. I mean, Jim?
Well, I have a comment too. You start, you know, ordinances, laws, you're gonna spend your time in court.
Yeah.
That's gonna be your new job, okay? What do other airports do? our size, right, our business model, how do they deal with that?
Right.
Okay, that's step one. So benchmark that. You start making ordinances and you know, most of them $25 to $500. So now, how do you explain that to the judge? Or should he levy that fine? Is it $25 or is it 500?
Right.
You know, and now you have reporting processes and more legal records you have to keep. I'll tell you what, someone goes out there and you have a chance of an intrusion or something, I don't ever want to see them out there again. I just don't, right? Because typically, that's a management problem of that company. They start breaking these rules. So that's a behind the door conversation, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And if you can't follow the rules and you can't get your equipment across my ramps, you don't do business anymore. It's real simple. I start pulling your licenses from your employees, start locking you down in training, you're done.
Right.
And that's your strong arm right there.
No, and I agree that the fines are probably something we wouldn't use very much because
Well,
we're going to use administrative first.
How are you going to enforce it? Who's going to collect the fine?
Right. Well,
Okay,
and
I mean,
that's
it's just too
what I'm
much.
thinking too. Am I going to have a citation book? Probably not.
It's just too much. Okay, maybe when you have an airport authority, we have some officers out there, and that changes the whole dynamic.
Sure.
But right now, you're just trying to standardize rules and modernize things from 50 years ago, and you're doing a fantastic job, and that's why we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But don't create yourself more work. You already have a system. You start breaking the rules, and I pull your badge. You don't come onto my property, right? And you can enforce that one.
Yep.
You sure can.
Yep.
And it's real simple. And it's judgment calls and how people push back or how these companies react to your decisions. And we can sit down and talk about that. They have a problem. But it's immediate. You break the rule, this is what you get. I'm done. I break the rule, here's a citation, now I'm going to fight it, and it's tied up in court for 6 months. You didn't change the behavior. You still get this person out there. So at the end of the day, you're going to pull their license.
Right.
You don't add a bunch of other stuff to it. That's just my comment. I do think that everything we're doing here, like the mayor said, helping the city manager, helping you out, you were hamstrung with a whole bunch of this stuff. And you've done a great job, so let's not go backwards. That's my comment. Thank you.
I'm looking at section 3.01, and Commissioner Call, I kind of like your input on here. I think there's some things prohibited in here that we will have a hard time enforcing, like the walk in a picket line or solicit funds, or the one of taking any pictures or video without permission. I think those are going to be real problematic. Now, and then part of the challenge becomes if they're someone with a badge and they're violating some of this, then you have a mechanism. But if they're not, now take for example the bottom point there of drive a vehicle into the AOA. I believe we can call the police on that and
Mm-hmm.
have them cited or arrested under that.
And these that you're talking about here were carryovers from the ordinance, and so I put them back in for discussion purposes, but I felt the same way about them. That they're a little awkward.
Call, what do you think? Am I out of line, or what do you?
So you're saying that this section 3, a lot of these things are within the ordinance themselves?
Yes, in the old ordinance,
Which has been
the one
replaced.
we just changed. And so the question is to make sure that we capture all of the rules that we wanted to capture and carry over. There were some that were a little ridiculous that I did just drop out that totally don't apply. But these in my mind were, they're a little wonky, but I'll put them in there and we'll talk about it. But I kind of thought the same is that, so pickets, that type of thing, we probably have an ordinance for that governs the whole city somewhere.
Right,
We
trespassing.
don't necessarily
Right.
have to have one for the airport specifically.
And then the reality is that the rest of these things generally apply to people who are there by virtue of a lease or a license. or an employment situation. Would that be correct?
Some, I mean, it is a public airport in the sense that, you know, folks can fly an airplane in from anywhere, and so you do have folks that are there that are not tenants, and then the occasional folks that are there for other reasons, construction companies and that type of thing. Most people will be badged, so you do have the ability to work within the security system to take care of violations. So, yeah.
Because a lot of these things could be incorporated into
Into
lease
a lease.
agreements by reference.
Sure.
And then you've got leverage because of the terms of the lease or the license.
Mhm.
In terms of a remedy.
Yeah, and the leases already do have language in there about local rules and regulations, so in a sense, it's already tied to this.
Right.
But I don't know, can we truly prohibit taking pictures on the airport?
So that might be something that would be better worded possibly, but the issue that we run into, and you know, Randy's real familiar with this, is the airlines. They're very sensitive to what pictures get taken out there. And it's partially due to competition. You know, these airplanes are all stored here. It's other issues that might arise that are unforeseeable, that might come up with the wrong person, someone who has something against an airline, for example, that sees a picture and finds some ammunition they can use against that airline. So they're very sensitive about those things. So they want the permission on that to approve or disapprove any pictures. So realistically, that comes through me. So we would coordinate with AirSail, we would coordinate with United or American or Frontier and say, what do we do?
But I really don't think there's any way we can, even though it's used for, we talk about commercial purposes, somebody stands outside the fence.
But that's why I say the wording could be changed. This says on the airport, which might be better worded. It implies inside the fence.
Okay, I can, you know,
You're
because the
exactly
reality,
right.
you go inside the fence, that's a whole different ball of wax, and that becomes something that is controllable, and yeah. But
Right.
I don't know, that was my thought about the photograph. Mike, do you want to jump in here? Okay.
One of the things,
Use the microphone so we can record it.
I know,
Get the
in trouble
minute.
again. On the photograph topic, one of the things with airplanes is tail numbers. That's like a
There you
license
go.
plate.
There you go.
And if you use a tail number, you cannot market that without the owner's permission. So that there are rules that are applicable to using photographs with tail numbers. So
Really?
those tail numbers, absolutely.
Wow,
You gotta be
okay.
careful. If you say, that's a really nice airplane, and you take a picture and you put it on your Facebook page cover or something, you better have that guy's permission, because you could get in a lot of trouble.
Okay.
Also, take note that you are a little bit different than a lot of airports in the fact that you do
So
have
many.
testing facilities. Those guys don't like their prototypes pictured.
Right.
And they will be the first ones that they see you on that ramp, even taking your phone out, they will ask you, please do not take a picture of our aircraft. And that's obviously for their reasons on their train of what they're doing. So I just wanted to make a quick note of that.
So, yeah, it's somewhat of a legal issue and it's somewhat of a business-friendly issue, both. Because we want to be able to say, yeah, we're on your team. We want you guys to succeed in what you're doing. And so we'll protect your assets.
All right, you just brought up a point. And with our rules, you know, you got inside the fence and outside the fence. Two different animals, totally.
Yep.
Right? Huge, huge. Inside the fence, we got federal law, we've got industry standards, we got all kinds of stuff. Aviation, you know, been around a long time. So inside the fence, you can follow, like you said, the N numbers, the names. There's all kinds of things, you know, they're talking about cargo airplanes. Who owns the STC on this cargo conversion? There's so much you have to protect out there. But that, you have to enforce that.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that we park airplanes in certain ways and this and that, so no one can see them or anybody really even knows what we're doing. That's up to the people testing. You know, a chunk of black plywood, I've seen all kinds of stuff behind plywood. You know, it doesn't take a whole lot. we can enforce the rules on the inside of the fence. It's just a little harder on the outside. So, you know, it's, with these rules, I think it all has to look at inside the fence.
Right.
I mean, everything we do is inside the fence. So when we go through these rules, just kind of keep that in mind, that that's what we're talking about. It's not normal society, it's everything we do inside the fence. Every business out there, if you have access to the ramp, we already have security, we already have rules, you already don't get to take pictures. Those things, these rules need to be enforced at the sign-in point of every business out there, because that's how that works. So you could have them in your desk, but unless I have a copy of these rules when I go into one of these other businesses and I give them my information, they hand me a visitor badge, that's where those are enforced. So you need to have a lot of input on these things, how they want to deal with their customers. I've been in different facilities where we had a one-stop shop, dealt with the richest people in the world, many, many years. We sold our line service to another company that was owned from overseas. Years ago, it was taboo, and we had to lock down our facilities. Our customers had to be escorted into our hangars because that company owned our fuel trucks now. It changed the whole dynamic, but that was interpreted by the feds and everybody else, the State Department. So we just be cautious with our rules that we have to enforce, because our customers are going to have to do it, right? And then you have your authorities with your access, but it all has to do with who gets through the fence into our controlled area.
Mm-hmm.
And so no matter what rule you have, it starts with, how do I get to the ramp? Because we don't care about anything else unless you get to the ramp, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I just want to throw that out there. It has to do with the N numbers, registrations, STCs, secret stuff that we do. All has to do with access to the ramp, and our customers have to enforce it. So that's all. Thanks.
I think, okay. 3.03, loss of privileges. I would ask that the appeal would be made to the city manager as opposed to the governing body.
Yeah, this is where I just shortened it because I didn't want to copy all of that until we had something final.
Yeah.
So I just shortened it so that this is not, that's why it's in red, because it's not complete.
And then in the prohibited activity about the no dogs or animals in an area for preparation and consumption of food or beverages, I think that's a Department of Health.
We can probably take that out, because, yeah, you're right.
That's what I'm thinking, if it's already enforceable by the
Yep.
Department of Health.
That one gets a little sticky these days because we have
Yes.
emotional support ostriches and such.
Yes.
So that's, as I was writing that, I'm like, I'm not sure what I really want to put here. Other than to look at the ADA definition of a service animal, that's the only regulation that I would look at doing, and, you know, and say that's allowed because it's ADA. Past that, you know, it's local laws.
Okay. Other thoughts?
My thought is we just need some time to go through these
Yeah.
individually
Yeah.
and discuss remedy, you know.
Yeah, and I suspect we can
Enforcement.
let's cut some more of this down, and we may even find some things that we didn't think of.
Mhm.
But really, where these set of rules come in, you've got the minimum standards for how companies operate, how businesses operate, what that standard is for them, for their activity. You have the security rules, which are purely about that. They're all about security. And then you have these things like, we don't want you taking pictures either, because our tenants are sensitive to that. And so that's where we put in our local stuff that are our preferences that you know, wouldn't be covered somewhere else. This is the catch-all.
Okay. So come back next month? You all good with that? Yeah, I think we're getting there. And are you okay with the two documents, or do you want to continue that discussion?
Well, I mean, I'm not familiar with industry standard in terms of the documents being together or separate. You know, I don't know how most airports do it, but it would seem to me that it could be incorporated into one document.
Okay.
And I would just suggest that probably the reason it's done that way is simply because when you look at general rules, they apply to everybody, and when you look at the minimum standards, they only apply to companies. And so the idea is to simplify for your companies what they're seeing as a minimum standard. They don't have to, well, I don't care about dogs, you know, I don't have a dog, you know, they don't want to see that. So that's the only reason that I can see that it's different, is because of the application to a different group of people. They do apply to the companies as well, but primarily in a broader sense.
Okay.
But surely we can have that discussion.
We can continue that discussion.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Anything else on item 10? All right, so actually then item 10 becomes one of the agenda items for August, is what I'm hearing. Other topics for the August meeting? I mean, I got my favorites, but I'd like to hear from you guys. Yes. I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think Crunchpad, this CARES Act grant application and Hangar 84, that whole endeavor, want that back up again.
Realistically, are you looking at the end of July, or are you looking at the middle of August for this grant application?
So I would say probably middle of August is more reasonable, maybe by the end of August on the late side. Mike, would you think that's reasonable? I mean, you guys have got to put it together, so it really depends a lot on when we get some of this information in. I mean, we just got some of it today from CAVU, but the COG still owes us some information, so
But it sure seems to me like if we go that long, we're at jeopardy
yes,
of not getting the money.
agreed,
And
agreed.
so
I'm
it
I'm
seems
with
like-
Commissioner Kunkel, absolutely. I'd like to shoot for the end of the 31st is,
I can tell you if you're relying on me to get it on the 31st, it ain't going to happen because I've got my Part 139 inspection next week. I'm going to be very, very busy.
So
so-
who else do we get to put it together?
Well, Armstrong's putting it together, but we're still waiting on other people at this point. And so we need someone to grab a cattle prod is probably what we need to do.
oh, I'm good with that.
But we may not.
But I can tell you my next week is very well
We may
taken
not
up.
want the mayor doing that. But there's nothing wrong with asking the city manager
Right.
if he doesn't have a person that can assist you with that. Because if we're gonna jeopardize getting the grant, which screws CAVU and stuff, then that doesn't create jobs.
Right.
That's right. Well, we could, how about this? I was looking at how about the 7th of August? Because the 31st is actually 1 week from tomorrow. That's pretty tight. The 7th would be 2
Yeah.
weeks.
And it's a crucial week for me, so it's going to be very hard for me to be involved.
I agree with what you're saying. I know that's hard to believe.
I know.
But I
Wait
agree
a
with
second,
what
let's
you're
have a
saying.
moment. Come on, bud.
No, we're not gonna hug. We're not gonna hug. But I don't think it's I don't think it's the timeframe. I think it's the bodies
Yes.
to go make it happen.
Yes.
So that's
agree.
the key. We need to get a hold of Joe and say, Joe, here's what we've got. How do we fix this? Do you have a body that can help you do something?
Yeah, we can do that.
I think we can do that.
But I think you're spot on about, also, the whole point is, this is first come, first served. It's making me nervous.
Well, I
It-
don't know that we're nervous, but nobody's got any money to do this if we don't get the grant.
That's right. Unless we get real
Unless
creative,
Cavu's gets real wealthy.
or we win the lottery.
You got to buy a ticket.
Well, we could use that UDAG money to buy it, never mind.
I think we'd have to go to council. for that.
But all said, yeah, Mike, you kind of get our sense here. We can talk about arbitrary dates, but I think it's critical that we see about this being and let us know what we need. Okay. If we can find out what others, who the others are, we'll work it, okay?
Yeah, I think I can get our letters of support within a couple of days, so that issue for my part is not a huge issue. I just need to have the other information that goes into that letter.
So we're looking at letters of support from the congressional delegation, both
Yeah.
senators and all three Congress, or just towards small?
The whole delegation.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay, I can make some, on that one, in all seriousness, I can make some phone calls. So I'm comfortable with that. I mean, it's kind of elected official to elected official type thing, and that makes sense. Say, please help us with this. And I'll try to be nice. Don't laugh. I can be. All right, I'll do that. Crunch pad, I don't think we need to go back to the water tower anytime soon. You guys? Okay. And then the regular stuff about, I know what I'm curious about, and that's the Jen Air hangar. We approved that lease, didn't we, in the council?
We did.
Okay, so that project that Jen Air's doing on their new hangar, we get an update on that. I'd like to hear where that's at.
Okay. Yeah, and right now, it's, that money is the same money as with the tear down pad. They're financing those together. So once they get through their financial stuff, I think they will have an update on their construction progress.
And full disclosure, we're talking August 20th, so we would be back on the third Thursday cycle. And the nice thing is that is 4 weeks from today. Because we got this weird thing, we had 5 Thursdays or whatever, so we kind of got off, and we also had a delay on getting the agenda posted. But the 20th would be the third Thursday, and we can get back on that, but it's still 4 weeks from today, so that gives time to get some things worked out. So I've got Jen Air, that's building 32?
No, Jen Air is building, it's actually 1537. It's probably on there, but not named.
No, that's 32 Enterprise Street, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
It's
sounds right.
15, and what is it again, 15 what?
1537.
Okay. All right, what else? You know, if any of you folk, any one of you, think of something you'd like to have added, don't hesitate to tell Scott. And I mean that. I mean, anybody,
Yeah. Email, please.
yeah, email Scott. Yeah, true. But we need at least, probably at least 5 days before minimum. A week would probably be better. But
Yeah.
go ahead and email them if something pops up and you say, hey, I'd like to learn about X. Shoot them an email. Okay? Anything else we need to chit-chat about? All right. Did we ever get, never got Commissioner Armstrong, huh? Sorry about that. All right, I've got 11:35, and I will say we are adjourned. Yay.